Watch out for my hill! Oh! Would you like to try one of
Not right now.
Firebender! My cabin!
Come along with us on an idle ride through the latest science fiction and fantasy shows, movies, and video games. Welcome to Idle Ride. I'm Marcy, your host, here with my chosen brother Paul and co-host.
Hello, everyone.
And we are here to talk about the third episode in the Avatar Last Airbender live action show, Omashu. And again, we're just going to kind of go through it, I think, like we did last time, where we talk kind of about the Fire Nation / Zuko, and then the Team Avatar folks. So, before we get started though, Paul, what was your first, after you've watched it, impression of this episode?
I guess to preface that, I watched 15 minutes of it, and for some reason my brain was just like, no, stop watching this. So I had to pick it up the next day. Like, I almost never stop watching things in the middle like that. So that was kind of weird.
Do you feel like it was because how you felt, or
yeah,
about the episode?
I think it jarred me a little bit, and I wanted it to pick a lane, and we can get into that with the firebending part of it, because I think that's where I was annoyed. But yeah, I watched the rest of the episode and I thought, wow, that was an episode, and I guess I have to watch more. I didn't really like this one.
Yeah, so there were some choices that I think that they made sense to bring, for example, the episode from the animation Jet and the Omashu episodes together. It actually was not that bad of a decision, I don't feel like, to do that. Because
on paper, it's a good idea.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But I think it just fell short at making those meld well. But let's start with the Fire Nation. So we get this huge, long scene where you start out with some rebels, and they're Fire Nation rebels, and they're gonna try to kill Fire Lord Ozai. And you see this young girl being brought into the meeting, and I mean, I knew it was Azula immediately just because I knew what that actor looked like. And I'm like, here we go. Because I did say earlier that I was excited to get some new content that maybe we hadn't seen in the cartoon before, which this technically is new content. But I am completely against bringing Azula into this first season.
Yeah, we need to know her brother before we can start digesting her relationship with him and all that.
Yes, and the other thing that it does is, again, in these movies, superhero type movies, the more characters you bring in, the less time you spend on the other characters. It's
math.
It's math. You're making screen time for this other character, so the other characters don't get as much screen time. And there's really no reason to have Azula in this season, or Fire Lord Ozai. I think you should be learning about the Fire Nation through the experiences of Team Avatar in these villages and cities where they learn about all the cruel things that they've done. You don't need to see it embodied in the actual leader.
Exactly. The long shadow that he casts is terrifying. Like, we can learn about how horrible he is without ever seeing him.
Exactly, and that's why Zuko is so important, because you learn how horrible Ozai is without ever actually seeing him.
Yeah.
Because he fucking burned Zuko's face. I mean, I just can't stand that they have chosen to embody him so quickly in a character. Like, you don't need that when you can see how horrible he is through Zuko. And they've sort of taken all the power away from Azula's character here at the very beginning. Like, she is presented to you in season 2 as this immensely competent and terrifyingly psychotic, intelligent person, sister to Zuko, who is an incredible villain. She's an incredible villain. And they've kind of taken all of the mystique away from her by showing her this season and kind of the way that she is in this season. So these rebels, they come in, they try to kill Fire Lord Ozai, but instead they learn that, it was just a trap. Azula, the daughter of the Fire Lord, was in the rebel group, told Ozai about the attempt on his life, and there's a scene where he kills all the rebels with his fire. And this is where they learned from Zhao from the previous episode that, the Avatar has been spotted. And you see Azula kind of being almost joyful about Ozai murdering these rebels.
It's so one-dimensional. There's no anything going on here that matters. It's just classic movie villain does his movie speech and then incinerates a bunch of teenagers.
Exactly. Again, no emotional depth in this show, really. It's like, here, let me give you the caricatures of these characters that you love. Like, again, somebody had specific characters that they loved, and they were like, I cannot live not doing a season without Azula. Save Azula for later. That you could have showed her maybe at the end of the season as a teaser. Something. Anyway, so we get that scene, and then you see more of Uncle Iroh and Zuko and Zhao are now talking about the Avatar together. Zuko still wants to be the only one to be hunting for the Avatar, but Iroh has convinced him to allow Zhao to be part of their team.
And how can that go wrong?
Yeah. Actually, there's not a lot of scenes with the Fire Nation, again, in this episode, but we learn that Zhao has found a traitor to Zuko on Zuko's ship, and it's the Chops guy. He's Lieutenant Ji, and he's been giving or feeding Zhao all the information that Zuko has. And they do learn that the sky bison has been sighted, or the sky cow, they call it, in a certain area, and so they head towards Omashu, and they determine that they're going to go in and search for the Avatar in Omashu, and then Zuko and Iroh decide to go and disguise themselves to find Team Avatar.
I have something to add to this. So I understand that costumes are a very big part of a show. It helps you identify immediately who someone is. Some people, like me, may be less good with names, and so it's just like a very important way to keep the consistency in your head. And I do like that in this episode, they did disguise themselves in not Fire Nation, red clothing. And also on the Team Avatar side, they also did a little bit of a disguise trick to look like they're earthbenders. But I also kind of don't get how thick and heavy specifically Katara's outfit looks. Like, how is she not dying of overheating?
Yeah, I kind of noticed that this episode too, that she has those huge boots that are fur boots, and I feel like she would have changed out of those by now. And she kind of does in the animation. Her costume does change and become lighter looking.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. All of their outfits look very canvasy.
Yeah.
Speaking of costumes, I guess we could, because we're still on the Fire Nation, there's a scene where Azula is talking to some characters that we know and love, May and Ty Lee.
Yep.
And again, just a not very interesting introduction to very interesting and cool characters. Like May and Ty Lee, you meet them in a way in season 2 that is so intriguing, where Azula has to go find a crew to go with her to search for the Avatar. And so she goes and finds her old friends from school and pretty much blackmails them and forces them to come with her. Neither one want to actually go on this journey. And she makes them come with her because they are literally terrified of her. Like, she threatens Ty Lee. Ty Lee's in a circus, and Ty Lee is like a tightrope walker. And Azula's such a psycho. She's like, oh, let's make this more difficult. Let's set your tightrope walking thing on fire. And just she does crazy shit. Like, oh, you don't want to come with me? Too bad. Like, I am going to terrify you until you do this, but in a very cold way. Mm-hmm. And you don't really see Azula ever unravel. She's always like very like cold and calculating. Mm-hmm. That's the main aspect of her character in season 2. So you get a little bit of that feel like in this scene where they look a little scared of her.
Yeah.
But it's not nearly as well done as it was in the cartoon.
Yeah, we're probably going to be saying that a lot. It wasn't done as well as the cartoon.
The Fire Nation story is pretty straightforward. They dress up and infiltrate Omashu, and then eventually they meet Team Avatar. So let's move to the Avatar storyline. You do get a scene where Aang is teaching Katara about waterbending at the beginning. Again, we still don't see a lot of all of them together scenes, but this is a really good point where they could introduce that Aang is also trying to learn waterbending, but they do not.
They do the opposite.
He never once attempts any kind of bending.
Yeah.
Other than airbending.
Yeah. Why did he say, no, I don't want to now?
Oh, I'm only used to monk gyatso teaching me. No, this is not the Aang that we know. The Aang that we know was desperate to learn the other bending powers because he needs to become the Avatar, and the only way to do that is to learn those powers. But they've kind of eliminated that aspect of the lore of the story, basically.
Even after he got chewed out by Kyoshi herself to try and do better and warned that there's devastating stuff coming in the future if he doesn't figure out a way to do what he has to do, he's still no, I don't really want to do waterbending today.
Yeah, and Katara, they miss a lot of the stuff with that because Aang is better at waterbending than her at first. And she's super jealous of Aang for being better at waterbending than her. It's these little petty moments that are friendships where, people do things that you don't like, and then you're like, okay, but then you make up at the end. I mean, that's becoming friends. And you get one little moment of silliness between them where they're splashing water at each other. And that's it. That's all you get.
It was a cute moment. I love the idea that Katara, who can waterbend, is still just pushing the water with her hands.
I know. I did think that was funny. I was like, I can waterbend. There's a lot of scenes. They just aren't as creative with the bending in the TV show as I guess you can obviously be more creative in a cartoon than you can in a television show, but you have the source material. She would do things like create a big wave and splash somebody, or jets of water, and yeah, they're just not really showing these things. And I think when we originally talked about this, I was like, oh, this will be so great. They'll make their journey longer, so it's a year long or something. I was like, that because it seems so weird that they're learning all this stuff so fast. But they actually shorten it in this live action one.
You're right.
I because they don't go to all the villages. It's all this shit happens in one fucking week.
Amazing.
It's crazy. So they are playing around and they decide they're flying, and then Aang sees what he thinks is an airbender. And we know the story of Teo, which is way later in the first season of The Mechanist, but he sees them, so they follow this possible airbender, and they come upon Omashu, the city of Omashu, and it's a very large earthbending nation city that Aang has visited before in his past, but they have to sneak in to this city.
And they don't know why yet.
Yeah, they don't know why. So I would say that of all the actors, we get to meet Jet in this scene.
Yes.
And like the actor playing Zuko and the actor playing Jet, they 100% understand the assignment.
Yep.
I'm going to say that a lot. I think it's just that they're older and so they have a little bit better acting chops. I don't know, but like...
Maybe they watched the show as a kid.
Yeah, who knows? But I think they definitely embody who those characters are. And despite the changes in the storylines, I feel like Jet was Jet in this episode.
Yeah, it took 0 seconds for me to be on board with Jet being Jet.
Yeah, exactly. And he's cute and he's charming, but he's serious and like he's intense. And that was kind of what his character was in the animated show.
And so I was hoping that they would spend more time with Jet and Katara as like a mirror image of Sokka in the previous episode, that it would just be a mirror romance, you know? And it wasn't.
They kind of did.
Nah, it was
did.
garbage.
Well, I'm really struggling because there's a lot of scenes that they give Jet or lines that would have been Aang lines. So like Jet and Katara connect in the way that Aang and Katara connect in the animation. And so they have given Jet like all these moments that were Aang moments. And it doesn't really match his character from what we know of Jet. And you're right, there is cute flirting. And they actually flirt with the Zutara, which I'm surprised. Like, well, that's the shipping name for Zuko and Katara. I mean, I was like, what? What? I was all for Zuko and Katara. Like, I know Aang had his little crush on her, but, he's like a 12-year-old. Like,
Zuko's way more age appropriate, yes.
He is. And they have a lot more in common. Like, they both lost their mothers.
They both have rage issues.
Rage issues, trauma in their past with their parents, like abandonment issues. Yeah, they have a lot in common, Zuko and Katara. But we're supposed to be talking about Jet and her. And, they flirt, but it's definitely not to the level that we get with Sokka and Suki, which I think is appropriate. Like the animated show, the Jet episode, they flirt, but Aang is always like kind of getting in the way because he's a little jealous of the Jet Katara relationship, which again, in the Team Avatar storylines, you never see them together except like a few scenes where they meet up.
And we'll get to that scene because I have a bone to pick with it.
Okay. So you get Jet. Jet helps them get into the city. He helps them disguise themselves, warns them that there's danger in the city cryptically, and then kind of drives off with his cart. And guess who we see next?
Cabbage guy?
The cabbage merchant has arrived! And again, I am for every single one of these side characters. Like, how can you get the side characters so right and the hero characters so wrong? Like, I don't understand it. I guess because side characters are kind of a one-note character, right? Like, he literally only cares about his cabbages. But,
and that's what we love about him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I fucking love cabbage, so I get you, cabbage merchant.
I cooked some cabbage in the oven just the other week, and it was amazing, and I'm going to do it again.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, anything made with cabbage is good. Anyway, so Cabbage Merchant arrives. Despite this show really struggling, I don't fucking care because I got my Cabbage Merchant.
Also, I guess as a sort of a character as well, Omashu looks beautiful. It has the sliding ramps that transport goods. It looks like a lived-in world. It looks amazing.
Yeah, they did a great job with all of the places that they go to. But again, no Appa. Like, no Appa. They arrive on Appa. You don't see him the rest of the episode. There's plenty of opportunities for Appa to be a character here. They obviously just didn't have the money to make him a character. And it really just makes me sad that he's not around. So they're in the market. Aang sees Teo's little fly thing come down. It's just like, an airbender. And he runs over there and sees Teo, but realizes
you're not
that
a bender.
He's not a bender. And I do love that in the show and here, Teo is in a wheelchair and nobody mentions it and everybody just goes about their business. And it was a great way for people who are differently abled to be represented as just being a character. And everybody accepts that.
Yeah.
And they don't have to mention it, you know? And
Right.
so that was really cool. So there's a bomb. It goes off. Team Avatar kind of helps save Teo. Teo's dad runs out and is like, I'm the mechanist. So there's a really weird part of that scene. They're desperately running away from a bomb that's just exploded in the city with Teo's dad. And as they're doing it, Teo goes, oh, and who are you? And Katara's like, I'm Katara. And he's like, hi, I'm Sai. Like, I don't know. It's just like, again, an example of terrible writing. Like, you wouldn't be like introducing yourself as you're running away from a terrible thing that just happened.
I would agree that no normal person would do that, but I always thought that the Mechanist was a little weird in the head.
That's true, he is.
But Katara being also like that doesn't really make sense, you're right.
Yeah, it's just a nitpick, of course, but and Teo has seen Katara and Aang help put out the fires with their bending, so he's seen that they're benders. And they meet back up at the Mechanist's shop, and everybody introduces themselves. They know that they're benders, they're fighting the Fire Nation, and again, a lot of good stuff here for Sokka. Like, you see him growing, becoming kind of the engineer with the Mechanist.
Getting some dad advice.
Yeah, getting some dad advice on his storyline anyway with the Mechanist. I mean, they kind of all three go on their own little storylines, but, you know, Sokka helps the Mechanist. He's creating this air balloon. And so Sokka is integral in making that air balloon design work. And then Katara is practicing her water bending, and it goes out into like the market to do it, and is practicing, and then notice the Mechanist kind of walking off. And so she follows him, and he is meeting with a firebender spy, and she's kind of surprised, and Jet pulls her aside. So he's been watching the Mechanist for a while, and this is where she learns that Jet's a freedom fighter, rebel in Omashu.
Okay, so nitpick number one for me on this, because it's all going to be one big nest of what I think is bullshit. How is it that Sokka is hanging out with the Mechanist and doing Mechanist stuff, and the Mechanist is going to talk to a spy at the same time?
Yeah, I don't know, Paul. It's dumb shit writing is what it is.
And we continue.
So this is where we get Katara's storyline of going with Jet, following the Fire Nation spy that wanders off, and then they confront the Fire Nation spy, and he has two cronies with him. And this is where Jet's whole crew is introduced. And again, 100% on board with the side fucking characters. Like, he's got the Duke, he's got Pipsqueak, he's got Longshot, he's got Smellerbee, and they're all exactly as you would want them to be.
Yeah, they all look great.
And the whole like Peter Pan Lost Boys feel is very much there, and they're like fighting, and you know, you could see the desperation. They're all orphans, they all hate the Fire Nation. And you know, Jet and Katara had this moment, like I said, where they talk, and this is one of the scenes that I feel like this should be a fucking Aang scene, because she basically tells her whole story about her mother to a complete fucking stranger. And like, this is where Aang and her connect, is like she opens up to him and he opens up to her. And it's just frustrating to me that this should not be a scene with a complete stranger.
Right.
This is like a trauma in her life. It should be with her friends. It shouldn't be with Jet.
Yeah, and Aang should be there being jealous, because that's a part of the dynamic.
Exactly. And Jet is like way too philosophical in this scene. Like, he really is like, you should use that love for your mother. Really? Because like, you only think about hate to fuel your fire for the rebellion. So it's weird that he kind of is the person to help her realize that she should use the good memories to fuel her bending. That's definitely an Aang thing.
Yeah. I sort of think that if there was an intention behind all of this, it's that they're trying to trick their audience into thinking that Jet is fully like a good dude. because they want to inspire the confusion and the debate that happens in like 2 minutes, that they resolve a minute later.
Well, so that leads us to the little Aang storyline with Teo. They have some information that the rebels might be somewhere in the mountains, and both Teo and Aang can fly up there. So my question is, like, how does Teo get flying to begin with? Because he has to literally fall off an edge to start gliding.
That's a good point.
Like, what is he riding? Wheeling all the way to the top of the city to, like, fly off somewhere? Because, you know, I think the episode that they're in is called the Northern Air Temple.
That's
and
right.
that is where they're at the very top of this giant mountain. So all the gliders sail around because they're at the top of a mountain. So that's kind of weird. Just another little nitpick. But so they make it to the mountains and somehow find the hideout. And Aang finds the Turnip Man's, aka Jet's, disguises there along with some blasting jelly. Oh no, Jet's a terrorist. He's the one that caused the bomb. Like, so convenient.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they all come back together. There is a small scene here with Zuko and Iroh. They're in the marketplace, and this was where my little, like, Zutara sense was tingling, where Zuko sees Katara run by and she has this scarf that Jet gave her that's like floating behind her. And then he creepily puts out his hand and kind of like strokes the scarf as she runs by. And you're like, oh, do you have a little crushy crush on our Katara? I wouldn't see why not. Like, I know he did. Anyway, so Zuko and Iroh know where they are. So Zuko follows Katara. And Katara gets back and she is going to tell Team Avatar that the Mechanist is the traitor. And then as she arrives, Sokka and Aang have been talking about how Jet's the traitor. And they all start yelling at each other. And Sokka calls Katara a baby. And Katara's like, you never listen to me.
Yeah.
So why don't you describe your feelings about this scene?
I think that the actors did the best they could with what they had. So I'm fully not blaming them. I think that they acted their emotions well, but everything else about the scene makes no sense. Why does Katara, like, have this romantic getaway with Jet and his crew, and then she's suddenly like, oh my god, it matters that I have to talk about the Mechanist that my friends are hanging out with. Like, she forgot about them or something. And like, the timing is just so convenient that they want you to like feel confused and conflicted. And so the fact that they resolve it in the same basic time, like the same scene, is just, there's no payoff to it. And I think that's why I was really mad at that.
Because how is it that they learn? I'm trying to remember the timeline. Because then
Katara learns about the murder plan, and then she's like, oh, we got to stop the murderer.
But how does she learn about that?
They tell her. Like, they want her on board.
Oh, because of the blasting jelly.
Yeah.
But how do they know that the Mechanist has it? Oh, doesn't she, like, run into Jet, and he kind of basically tells her the plan?
Yeah.
So she runs out, and is like, you don't believe me.
Yeah, and then immediately
Meets up with Jet and confronts him about it.
who's already like enacting his plan because they've already figured out the suitcase that the Mechanist had and had a duplicate of it filled with blasting jelly, and presumably they figured out the weights.
Yeah,
it's Mission Impossible bullshit.
Yeah, it's so bad. And also it just really frustrates me that Katara has to come by and be like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And it's like,
make fun of me later.
Yeah, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong either.
Right.
And that's what's so frustrating is they never apologized to her for questioning her, really. Because, I mean, I guess they don't really know that the Mechanist is the bad guy yet in this episode, but it's just a very weird turn of events that doesn't really make sense. They could have actually if they were going to do this plot, they could have drawn this plot out through a couple episodes.
Thank you. And then the emotions and the time investment would have mattered.
Right. Like, if you want these characters to be key characters for, like, showing the differing ways that the Fire Nation has created a stranglehold on the city, it could have been, like, a 2-episode plot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also just feel like it's like the Mechanist, when he's presented this way, kind of gets away with doing a lot more. Like, in my opinion, even worse things than Jet did.
Yeah.
Like, he's literally giving the whole Fire Nation the power to take over the whole world. And Jet's, like, killing a few guys here and there and a few innocent people.
Like, ooh, an attempted regicide. Big deal.
Yeah. They're both bad, but Jet is rightfully so doing the only thing that he knows how, guerrilla warfare, to stop the Fire Nation. But he's kind of doing it in a place like he could go somewhere else. He could go to a Fire Nation outpost and be doing this kind of stuff.
Ooh,
but
you should talk to him about that.
It does get kind of all tangled up, like you said here. But in the end, Zuko confronts Team Avatar, while Team Avatar was going to go and try and stop this Jet plot of killing the Mechanist with
and the king,
the blasting jelly suitcase. And it comes together because Katara knows that the Mechanist is a bad guy, and they know that he's a terrorist, and so they all kind of figure out that Jet's going to try to kill him and the king, right?
Yeah.
So Zuko reveals himself. And Iroh's like, don't use your firebending because we don't want the earthbenders to come out of the woodwork. So Zuko's like, I don't need firebending to take out this kid. So Aang decides to fight Zuko and they break up, let Sokka and Katara go off to stop this plot to murder the king with the blasting jelly bomb. So what are your thoughts on this fight between Zuko and Aang?
I thought it was fun. It was, a standard market chase scene with scarves pulling you around. And I really liked that the one woman started beating up on Zuko for attacking a child.
Yeah, that was good. I actually really enjoyed this fight. I think it eliminated a few of our complaints about airbending not being fast.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
They're still overusing, as you said, the slow-mo for certain shots. Like,
when he lifted the 7 plates or whatever, it was like, oh, pew, 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 pew.
Yeah. I mean, that should be like the easiest thing to lift with your airbending powers. It should be like, whoosh.
Exactly. Yeah. I love our sound effects for this too.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought it was a good chase scene, a good fight scene. Mm-hmm. Well done. And we get a classic scene from the animation where Katara and Sokka are riding in the carts that are fueled by earthbending. And they do some jumping around in them.
Some Indiana Jones bullshit.
Some calling back to the cartoon. Again, though, I'm like, Appa could have been in this scene, man. They could have jumped on Appa and just flown to the king. I mean,
yeah.
There's so many missed opportunities. Like, Appa could have ate some of the cabbage merchant's cabbages. Appa fucking loves cabbages. Like, where's Appa? Where's Appa? Anyway. So,
we should get shirts that say, "Where's Appa?"
Where's Appa? Katara and Sokka make it just in time to the king's location, which is really weird to me that there's somehow 2 children are able to just approach the meeting spot for the king and the Mechanist.
Yep, that's a little weird.
And Katara sees Longshot gonna shoot a flaming arrow.
But nobody else sees that there's a guy with an flaming arrow pointed at the king.
Yeah. And he shoots the arrow, and Katara saves the day with her waterbending.
Well, so that was an arc because she wasn't able to use the whip. That was the first time she succeeded with it, so.
That's true, yes. She did use it for the first time well, but it was all slow motion.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool, though, to see the water, like, dissipate the fire arrow. That's pretty much it for that scene. I think you don't see Katara and Sokka after this point in this episode following. Yeah, they're faded out. And Zuko gets so enraged because he can't catch Aang that he uses some firebending, and then everything goes to shit. And the cabbage merchant finally says his cabbage merchant line, which is, "My cabbages!" It was so awesome. Aang gets away?
Nope. Aang gets foot cuffs with the earthbending triangle things.
Right. So as Zuko's chasing him, Iroh says, "Hey, man, the earthbenders are coming. We need to get the fuck out of here." And so they start running away, and then Aang gets caught by the earthbending
Almost.
police.
Iroh sacrifices himself by going, "I'm a firebender," shooting at the sky.
Yeah, isn't that like... Because I think, well, I guess that's true. The Aang scene is the very last scene, so Iroh sacrifices himself for Zuko so Zuko can escape the Omashu. So yeah, that's, I mean, the episode in a nutshell. I think they had what could have been a really good combination of episodes, but really fell short.
Yeah.
Like, if I was to have done that, if I was to mix these two, I would have completely eliminated Jet's rebel crew being in a forest. That makes no sense at all.
Yeah, it takes you all out of the scene because you're in a city, like, be in the city.
Right.
Yep.
So Jet would have been a freedom fighter in the city. They would have had a urban hideout, several urban hideouts. So the Mechanist, you could have had him have like a really cool, like metallic looking workshop. He could have been at the top of the mountain. That's where his workshop is. And then maybe Katara could have seen him sending a message on a message board.
Wait, hold
that
on,
has
Marcy.
a fire.
You're saying that the technology guy didn't have to walk out of his house and go publicly meet with a Fire Nation spy?
Hell yeah, Paul, like, hire me. You want to know these two stories? I'll show you how to do it. Like, losing the whole story of, like, Teo's people basically taking over the northern air temple and kind of making that part of their culture, and how upset Aang is that they have basically completely destroyed a piece of his history. All of that's lost.
Yeah. Might have been a better show if they just followed the cabbage merchant the whole time.
Like, just Team Avatar from the cabbage merchant's perspective. Yeah, that would have been good. This is where I started going, oh no. Oh no. So I binge watched the first 4 episodes, and after episode 4 I was like, I gotta take a break, because I could feel like my heart just dropping with each next episode. It was like, oh, they're just losing their way a little bit on what's important about this show. And then it's sort of like has a couple good midway eps, and then it kind of really jumps the shark a little bit. But what did I like about this episode? I really liked the flashback with her mom. I thought that was a really sweet, like, way to show how much she cared for and loved her mom.
Okay, yeah.
And I liked that you are seeing her life through these flashbacks, and it's a little more than you got of her mom. Like, I don't think you only see the scene in the hut with her mom, the, like, devastating scene in the cartoon. So, like, seeing her mom in a happy place was really nice. And of course, the cabbage merchant, A+. And when you get introduced to Jet's gang of freedom fighters, that was a really good, like, scene.
Yeah, the part where, like, that was a good hit, Pipsqueak, and then Katara guessed the wrong one.
Yeah, that Pipsqueak's the big guy. Yeah. I mean, they're doing these good nods to the cartoon, but not understanding what the cartoon's heart is.
Yeah. So I'm curious what people watching this for the first time are going to feel like. Like, I keep trying to put myself in that position, and I think that's part of the reason why I'm watching them one episode at a time like this, is to just sort of absorb them from perspectives that are
Multiple
not my
perspectives.
own.
Yeah. Well, and it is funny how much I cannot stop comparing. It is so hard. And I'll be honest that, because I did a second watch through of these 2 episodes today to talk about it. And a second watch through wasn't as bad as the first because my expectations were lowered. So I was like, okay, I can see some value in this. But when I first watched it and my excitement was at my peak, that meant my lows were at my lowest.
Yeah, I think at about the time where you watched episode 4, John texted me and he said, I've had to talk Marcy down from this. Like, she's really upset.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know if I want to do a podcast on this. Like, should I even talk about this anymore? But it's for my fans. No, like, I think it's important that we talk about it because maybe someday they'll get it right. Or maybe Andrew was like, maybe the next season they'll like understand, get some criticism and take things to heart.
That is a pretty common theory that the second season is, when a show actually gets its stride.
And that was true about the animation as well. I feel like universally people say that it had kind of a slow start, especially the first 6 episodes of the animation. I feel like its slow start is nothing compared to this.
Yeah. I'm going to risk this opinion and say that maybe some things shouldn't be live action for actual reasons. The Appa complaint is very much a part of that.
I would 100% agree with you. Like, until we can get a point where we can make cute, fluffy creatures like look real, it's really hard to pull that off in a live action, even still. And truly, the original is an anime, and it's a cartoon where there's animal companions, and the animal companions play a very clear role of helping to ground Aang and the other characters in that love for human life and other kinds of life that aren't human. And there's like so many scenes, like the Kyoshi Island episode, there was that huge creature that he fights. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It's like almost like a dragon that comes out of the water. He's like surfing on it or whatever. He's surfing in the beginning of the Kyoshi episode Island. But then they get attacked by this giant, like, seahorse-like monster. And he uses that monster to put out the fire-bending flames. So there's just so much stuff that they aren't able to show of, like, the different creatures and monsters in the cartoon. And you're right. I mean, maybe some things just shouldn't be live action. And so far, they haven't shown me that this could be adequately remade. I'm pretty sure almost every remake I've seen recently has just been garbage.
Yeah.
Anyway, I promise, I'll try to keep some things positive, but it's really hard because I'm disappointed in this show a little bit.
You hear that, ATLA? You're disappointing Marcy.
I'll just have to be like, anytime I go, Paul, I'll have to be like, ATLA, come on, get it better.
You have it in you.
Let's see if there's any final things.
I want to say that I appreciate you giving the context of how they meshed these episodes together from the cartoons. As watching episodes 2 and 3, I was very confused because I thought Kyoshi came later. I thought that all of the Earth Kingdom stuff came later. And so, yes, now I understand better.
Yeah, I think they are unnecessarily taking stuff from the next seasons and mashing it into this season. And it's really doing the show kind of a disservice, but my brain is like, oh, they're taking it from this episode and they're taking it from this episode. Oh, they're taking this little moment from that episode. I don't know why. It's like they watched it and they're like, obviously it's called Kyoshi Island, so we need to to bring all the Kyoshi stuff into this episode. And I'm like, no, part of it is learning it as you go. Anyway. All right. Well, our next episode is going to be episode 4, Into the Dark. Again, if you have the opportunity, give us a like and a review on your podcasting app, and check us out on our socials, which is at Idle Ride. Sometimes it's at Idle Ride Podcast. And I'm on TikTok as well now, so any of the places you can kind of look and find us. And then if you want to email me, it's idleridepodcast@gmail.com is our email address. So come check us out there if you want any fun content for the Avatar Last Airbender show. I'll try to be more positive on my social medias. All right, well, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.